take it. All right, we're good to go. So if you're watching this, you probably already know me. If you don't, my name is Sienna, and I recently resigned from an organization and a job that I have absolutely loved for the past 3 years because I knew deep in my heart it was time to move on. And I did it without having anything to move on to. Since making the decision that I made, I have had lots of folks reaching out to me and generally existing in one of two camps. So either they are telling me that they admire me and it's so courageous and they're excited to see what I do next. And then I have this other camp of people who are absolutely terrified for me, who are reminding me about the unemployment rate and how am I gonna pay my bills and why would I leave a job without having another one lined up. But at the end of the day, everybody is really curious. They're curious about why I made the choice I made. They're curious about how I'm moving through this transition. And a lot of people are asking me a lot of questions. So I thought, hey, why not put a video together and let people know how this experience is going? I'm not an expert on career transitions in any way, but I'm doing it. So I might as well share with you what's working and what's not working. So I'm gonna talk about my journey over a few different videos, and the first one is titled The Decision to Leave. Dun, dun, dun. And so I'm gonna talk about 5 different things that I did in making the decision to leave. I'm not saying that these were the absolute right decisions or the right approaches, but they worked for me, and hopefully if there's something in it that piques your interest, maybe it'll be a challenge to you to kind of explore for yourself. So, most people don't just wake up one day and think, I must leave. It's time for a new job. Generally, this feeling of being a little bit unsettled and ready for something new or something different is something that's kind of lurking in the background and starts to get closer and closer to the surface. So for me, when I start to get uncomfortable with something, when I'm itching to move on, when I'm getting a little bit unhappy, it shows up like impatience, frustration, cynicism even. And so I used to get up every day and be super psyched to go to work. And I found myself not feeling that way anymore. And I knew that it wasn't anything to do with the people that I was surrounded by, and it wasn't that all of a sudden the job itself completely changed, but what I was looking for changed, what I was needing in my life changed. And I just was feeling really unsettled, and it'd be really easy to brush this under the rug. And I find that when I was growing up, I grew up in a home where going to work was something you did to pay the bills. And it was a decision that I made for myself that I wanted my work to be something that really brought me joy. I wanted it to be something that challenged me, and I wanted it to be something that I was passionate about. And so when I stopped feeling that passion, when I stopped feeling the joy and the challenge, that's when I knew I needed to look at things in a new way and maybe start exploring new options for myself. Step 1, the classic pro-con list. Always a good way to start. When I started thinking about the possibility of making a transition in my career, all of a sudden my head was filled with tons of thoughts, worries, concerns, opportunities, excitement. It was just mucky up there. And so I needed to take time to take what was up here and just put it down on paper. And so I made 2 pro-con lists. So I did a pro-con list for staying where I was, and I did a pro-con list for moving on and finding new opportunities. And although there are challenges with any choice, I tried to look at this from a very positive perspective to see what are the opportunities for me in both of those decisions. And so once I created that pro-con list, I wound up looking at it thinking, wow, there are some really good opportunities that could come forward if I stay where I'm at. There are some really cool opportunities if I move and take on a new challenge. And so you might be sitting there thinking, ooh, that just sounds even more confusing. But what it allowed me to do was shift my perspective and take any of the frustration that I was feeling and spin it into more of a positive outlook. No matter what I chose, I had the opportunity for positivity and joy in my work. So that was a really important first step. Step number 2, talk to people. So after I did my pro-con list and I was able to take all of the messiness and put it on paper, I decided to go out and talk to people about how I felt. I didn't take the pro-con list with me. I just had organic conversations with people about how I was feeling, what I was thinking, and allowed them to kind of ask me questions and unpack it with them. So for me, I talked to about 800 million people. That might not be what's right for you. Maybe just talking to a few people is what's right. I would recommend talking to at least 3 people. I would talk to someone who knows you really well, but doesn't work with you, someone who knows the work you do pretty well, but doesn't work with you, and this might seem a little bit crazy, but I would suggest also talking to someone that you currently work with or somebody you used to work with that you trust. And the reason for that is because they have a better idea of what the work environment is like, the goals of the workplace. They know what your role was in the space. And so I think that that could be really helpful. But again, that's up to you to decide if that makes sense, because you need to make sure that you really trust the person, and then it's not gonna put your current position in jeopardy. So anyways, talking to people. So what I did was I literally just sat down and, I asked for confidentiality with folks and I just let it all out. I let them know how I was feeling. I let them know what I was thinking. And the best thing was when people would ask me questions. I started to unpack so much and it was super, super helpful. So I cannot stress enough how important it is to just talk to the people around you. Okay, number 3. So after making the pro-con list, talking to all the people, I started to get a clear idea of really where I was headed. And for me, that was transitioning out of the organization that I was currently at. But it was really, really important for me to sit down and actually ask myself, what would I need to stay? The reality is that I went to work for that organization and I took on that position because I loved it, because I was passionate about it, and because I believed in it, and I still do. And so I wanted to be really, really careful that I was doing everything I could to make myself happy in that role and at that organization. So I made this list. So on the top of the paper, I put what would I need to stay, and I made a full list. And then I looked at that list line by line. Did I already ask for these things? Are these things even possible where I'm at? For me, when I got to the end of that list, I knew with confidence that I had approached the people that I worked with to see if these things were a possibility. And the reality is sometimes they're not going to be a possibility. And there could be any number of reasons for that. And sometimes that's okay. And maybe that just means that it's time for you to move on. If you take on this challenge of making this list of what do I need to stay, but you haven't had a chance to talk to your team, to work with your team, to see if these things can become a reality, do that first. I can't stress that enough, because you want to make sure that you take the initiative and take control of your own success before making any big decisions. So just a side note here, as you're going through all of these steps, one thing that I kept reminding myself about is that I wanted to focus on opportunity rather than challenges. So of course, when you're going through your pro-con list, and especially the part where you're talking about the cons of staying where you're at, that's gonna give you that opportunity to kind of vent out the frustrations. The reality is, no matter how much you love your workplace, no matter how much you love your job, we all have things that we don't like, things that challenge us or frustrate us or make us super angry. And so it's really important to get those things out of your system and get them on paper. And when you're talking to people, and even when you're writing that list about what would I need to stay, the things that are frustrating you are going to surface. But it's important to remind yourself to focus on the opportunities. And the reason for that is because when you're making a decision like this, it's not about what you feel your workplace is doing wrong or the things that don't work for you. It's about what you need for your career. This is about being proactive about your life and your career. And so you don't want to be constantly pulled down by your frustrations in one place. You want to focus on what can be great in a new space. And so I think it's just important to constantly remind yourself of that. This isn't about what's not working for me here. It's about what could work for me better somewhere else. So the final step I took in my decision-making process was probably the most fun and most invigorating and really built up my self-esteem, was doing a full mind map, brainstorm, whatever you want to call it, of everything that I have accomplished in the past 3 years in my role. So what I did was I pulled up my job description, and if you've had multiple job descriptions, pull them all up so that you can go through them piece by piece. So mark down, what are all of the responsibilities that I have had? Now, after you do that, think about what are all of the projects I've taken on? What are all of the things that aren't listed here that I've done? And write all of those things down. Everything that you've done that you are proud of, write those things down. Whether it's something little or something massive, put it down on paper. I wound up with this massive chart paper filled with all of these things that I had done. And that serves two main purposes. Like I said, it is so invigorating. So going through this process, trying to make a decision about whether you're gonna stay at your job or leave can be really stressful, and it can also be a little bit scary because you're going from going to the same place every day where you know how to do your job to maybe jumping into something new. And so that feeling of safety can waver a little bit. So it's really nice to take the opportunity to be like, look at all of the awesome stuff that I've done over the past few years. It really builds you up, and it kind of takes that stress away a little bit and excites you. And the second piece is, you're gonna need to update your resume, your LinkedIn. You're gonna be going out to places and telling them why they should hire you. And so you need to have a clear idea of what it is that you can what you are capable of doing. And so that was probably the most fun thing that I had done. And I believe that I took some time to check. No, I definitely did. I talked to people that I had worked with. I talked to people that I had collaborated with, and I asked them, is there anything here that's missing? Is there anything that I've done with you that you think should be added here? So that is the final step that I took when I was making my decision. And that part too, and I didn't fully make the decision before I had done that, because I needed to look at that stuff and unpack it a little bit. So once I made that full massive list, I looked through it and I did a couple of things. So one, I categorized them into different areas. It's to kind of understand what's the type of work that I'm capable of doing, and the kinds of roles that I could have next. So I did that. The other thing I did was I crossed off the things I don't want to do. One of the things I definitely know I do this is look at all of the things I'm capable of, and then you wind up in a position that you don't want to do just because you can do it. So get rid of the stuff that you're yeah, it's awesome that I can do it, but I don't want to do it. It's not something you're going to put on your resume, otherwise you're going to have the wrong jobs that are coming your way. So get rid of those things, or look at them and think, okay, I don't want to do that, but is there a transferable skill there that I could add to my resume? And then highlight the things that you loved, the things that that challenged you in a good way. And those are gonna be the things that will help to start forming what you might do next. So that is the brainstorming part. So that, basically in a nutshell, is the steps that I took to make the decision to leave. So I made that pro-con list, I talked it out with people, I went through everything I would need to stay where I was at. I made sure that I was focusing on opportunities and not the challenges that I was facing where I was at. And then of course I did that big brainstorm and mind map. And so even if you're not questioning where you're at, and you're happy and you want to stay, I would encourage you to do this stuff anyways, because it just gives you that boost and maybe helps you to think through what the path of progression might be for you in the role that you're at. And if you are feeling a little bit antsy like I was, it might help you make the decision of whether you want to stay where you're at and make some tweaks, or maybe it's time for you to move on. So thank you so much for listening. The next video that I'm gonna put together for you folks is about my resignation and my lingering exit. So for those of you that don't know, I gave about 2 months notice for my departure, and I began my job search after that. So as you can imagine, it was an interesting journey, and I'm excited to share with you how I was intentional throughout that process, what worked and what definitely didn't work. So I will see you next time.